Scare you.
All right. Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Saturday Morning Mastermind. I'm your host today, Samantha Studebaker Carl. And today we're continuing our discussion of Sacred Contracts by Caroline Myss. I'm here with my granddaughter. Okay, let's see. We're in chapter 2, and we're in the section titled Contracts and Myths, but we are a few paragraphs in at the parts that says in book 10 of the Republic. But before we get going with that, I want to give my friends an opportunity to introduce themselves, and then Catherine, you can take it away with the reading.
Lori Emmons in Denver.
Ted Pettingill, go to me.
Good morning, it's Catherine Clement. Okay, in Book 10 of the Republic, Plato gives a rich, detailed description of the stages of entry through which a soul must go before incarnating on Earth. Some scholars believe that Plato was simply using what is known as the myth of which closes the Republic as a poetic metaphor to back up his argument for living a virtuous life. Yet, the myth actually bears a striking resemblance to reports of contemporary people who have had near-death experiences or who have recalled disembodied spiritual experiences that they believe happened before their birth. The I don't know if it's or air, the of Plato's tale was a Greek soldier who returned to consciousness some 12 days after he appeared to have died on the battlefield. Awakening on his own funeral pyre in a scene reminiscent of an Edgar Allan Poe short story, tells a remarkable tale of what he witnessed during the time he was suspended between life and death. As Plato relates the story through the voice of Socrates, found himself in a kind of way station between heaven and earth, where souls were passing from one plane to the other. The dead were waiting to be judged and assigned to their reward or punishment, while other souls prepared for their journey to earth. In one great meadow, souls awaiting their return to earth went before the three fates: Clotho, who spins the thread of life; Lachesis, who determines its length; and Atropos, who cuts it off. Plato then writes, when and the spirits arrived, their duty was to go at once to Lachesis. But first of all, there came a prophet who arranged them in order. Then he took from the knees of Lachesis lots and samples of lives, and having mounted a high pulpit, spoke as follows: Hear the word of Lachesis, the daughter of necessity. Mortal souls, welcome, Jason. Mortal souls, behold a new cycle of life and mortality. Your genius will not be allotted to you, but you will choose your genius, and let him who draws the first lot have the first choice, and the life which he chooses shall be his destiny. After this prophet makes his announcement, he lays out many possible life scenarios among the souls waiting to incarnate and advises them to choose from these, quote, samples of lives. Plato informs us that there were many more lives than the souls present, and they were of all sorts. There were lives of every animal and of man in every condition, including tyrants. And there were lives of famous men, some who were famous for their form and beauty, as well as for their strength and success in games, or again for their birth and the qualities of their ancestors, and some who were the reverse of famous for the opposite qualities. And of women likewise, there was not, however, any definite character in them, because the soul, when choosing a new life, must of necessity become different. But there was every other quality, and they all mingled with one another, and also with elements of wealth and poverty, and disease and health, and there were mean states also. Plato makes it clear that while some of those choosing their lot in life were newly minted souls from heaven, many others had lived before, and their choices were influenced by previous lives. I should know how to say that. Odysseus, for example, was so
Odysseus?
disenchanted. Odysseus, thank you. Odysseus, for example, was so disenchanted about ambition from his endless striving that he opted for the life of a private man who had no cares. Jungian psychologist James Hillman offers a cogent summary of the final stage of Plato's story in his book, The Soul's Code, In Search of Character and Calling. When all the souls had chosen their lives according to their lots, Hillman writes. They went before Lachesis. Lacos equals one special lot or portion of fate. And she sent with each, as the guardian of his life and the fulfiller of his choice, the genius, daemon that had been chosen. Lachesis leads the soul to the second of the three personifications of destiny. Clotho to twist by spinning. Under her hand, in her turning of the spindle, the destiny of the chosen lot is ratified. Then the genius, daemon, again led the soul to the spinning of Atropos, not to be turned, inflexible, to make the web of its destiny irreversible. And then, without a backward glance, the soul passes beneath the throne of necessity, sometimes translated as the lap of necessity. Before entering life on the earth plane, however, the souls marched to the plane of forgetfulness, a barren waste with no trees or vegetation, and then were required to drink from the river of unmindfulness. As they drank, they forgot everything that had just transpired. The reason the gods ask us to do this should be obvious. If you know ahead of time exactly what's going to happen in your life, actually living it will seem as exciting as watching a replay of last year's St. Patrick's Day parade. How would you ever bring yourself to begin a relationship with someone who you knew would lie to you and abuse you, yet from whom you needed to learn a valuable lesson? How would you be able to bear counting the days when your loved ones would die? The problem of living with even some foreknowledge of one's future dilemma was brought home for me in a private consultation I gave to a man named Paul, who was in a serious state of depression. As I read Paul's energy, quote, file, information encoded in his energy centers or chakras, I was struck by its lack of a conventional sense of personal history that is typically present in the people whom I read. Instead, the information I was picking up was quite vague, leading me to speak only in, for me, frustrating appraisals such as, you sort of feel as if you can't make any choices in life and stick by them. Or, it seems you almost get something started and then you just drop it. Paul had none of the substance that I can detect in people who have accumulated life experience and, quote, cell memory. He was, in a sense, psychically empty. So providing him with any kind of direct and clear information was impossible. The only semi-concrete image that I got was of Paul in discussions with, quote, people, but I could not relate these interactions to his depression. After I confessed my frustration to Paul, he opened up and said that actually one image was very useful to him because I had validated certain memories that had long troubled him. Paul could recall a number of incidents that had happened to him before he had, quote, descended into physical life. When I pressed him to be more specific, he astonished me by saying that the people with whom I had seen him in conversation were actually two beings of light, whom he vividly remembered had helped him create the elements of this lifetime before he was born. As in Plato's story of Paul had been presented with an array of choices and was urged to shape his life's mission based on events and influences from previous lives, obligations that he needed to fulfill to be able to help others in their spiritual development, personal debts he owed, and some experiences that he was allowed to select. All of the events and relationships that he chose, with the help of his spiritual advisors, were woven together around one major path. The beings had been very specific about certain events he was meant to be part of, adding that the details of getting to these events would be taken care of from their end. Paul felt he had been introduced to a kind of, quote, support group, a celestial version of AA, or Archetypes Anonymous. That sounded a lot like the archetypal patterns I had just begun to identify in my workshops and readings. Although Paul said that numerous details had been organized and explained to him, he could not recall most of them. He did remember that he had been given choices about some of the events that he would need to attend, and that he was told that he was under contract to learn tolerance, among other skills of the soul. I think that's what I'm learning this year, or this time. Paul was also asked in what way he would like his learning to take place and was offered 3 options. After choosing one, he was aware that in spite of the predetermined plans, there were still blank, quote, creation spaces that would be filled in by the choices he made during his life. It all sounded a little like choosing your college curriculum. Decide on a major, take the required courses, then pick up a few electives for fun. Sadly, though, Paul didn't seem to be having much fun. The only thing he was sure of was that before descending from the energy plane of life to the physical plane, he had been told to take a drink from a river similar to Plato's river of unmindfulness. But because Paul did not want to forget everything that had just taken place, he decided not to drink the waters. In his words, he jumped the river and slipped into the ribbon of light that led directly into his mother's womb. As it turned out, his decision to flout the directions he was given had dreadful consequences. Because of his resulting larger-than-life memory, he had never felt grounded on Earth, and consequently he could not function in the real world, or he had trouble choosing to do anything for fear that some part of him knew ahead of time that it wouldn't work out. I abdicated any power of choice I had by refusing to forget, Paul said. I'm drowning alive in the feeling that I have no power in any matters of my life. I should have agreed to forget, because that would have given me options in my life. Paul said he was destined to live the first life that he saw, that even though we have places to go and promises to keep, we still have to choose how our challenges or opportunities will manifest. It may be, for instance, that you need to go through a certain experience, say, being passed over for a promotion, so that you'll discover what you really need to do. But if you knew before taking a job that you were going to end up in a dead end, you might have a lot of trouble showing up in the first place. As a result, you wouldn't get to have the kind of inner revelation that can only come from finding your back up against the wall. Paul felt frozen into inaction by the constant sensation that he knew what would happen in any given situation. Although Paul's story was unusual, I suggested that he try to have faith that he actually still had his power of choice, but was just so stymied by his extraordinary memories that he was unable to recognize it, since the gift of choice cannot be taken from anyone. Whether or not Paul had actual memories, he may have been using them as an excuse for not living his life to the fullest, as a metaphorical inability to act decisively, which would be enough to depress anyone. Nonetheless, the parallels with Plato's story are intriguing. Whether we take Plato's and Paul's fascinating stories on the level of reportage, myth, or metaphor, we can derive some valuable lessons from them. Plato makes clear that the choice of our lot in life is a cooperative effort with the divine. Through a series of aids or messengers, including the, quote, prophet, the 3 fates, and our personal daemon, a kind of guardian spirit, the divine offers us a selection of possible lives. Each life will vary in nature and length, but it is up to us to choose the individual setting with its attendant challenges. Our social and economic station in life, our physical appearance, health, and genetic predisposition are all part of the package. We even have the option, it appears, of choosing, quote, mean states, including a life of selfishness and megalomania. But the key to the myth, as well as the metaphor, is that these potential lives are essentially templates with no definite character. We each supply the specific character as we interact with the lives and challenges we have contracted for. In the Platonic scheme, then, free choice is an ongoing process that begins from the point at which we select the terms of our lives, and it continues through our last action on earth. We are truly in control of our fate. Virtue is free, writes Plato, and as a man honors or dishonors her, he will have more or less of her. The responsibility is with the chooser. God is justified. That very freedom can seem daunting, as if we are to freedom condemned, as Jean-Paul Sartre put in the title of one of his books. Even if we accept the principle of divine grace and guidance, we are still likely to long for some specific roadmap, some guide to our own contract. I believe that we can find that roadmap in part by examining the lives of some of the world's greatest spiritual masters, who, however high their level of realization, walk the same earth as we do and face many of the same doubts and fears. Is that a good place to stop?
Yes, I think so.
Okay, cool. I was thinking as when this first, let me bookmark it so I know where I'm at. When I first started reading, it was talking about that guy that they thought was dead for 10 days or whatever, and then he was alive. I often wondered that about Jesus. Was he really dead and came back to life, or did they think he was dead and then he woke up? I don't mean to be disrespectful when I say that, but
Well,
just
did they have containers back then? I mean, could we drank some wine from a lead container?
who knows?
That was how a lot of them ended up that way. The lead would absorb into the wine, and they would drink it, and it would get into their bloodstream, cause all kinds of issues.
Oh, wow. I didn't even know that.
When they came up the bell that you ring, that all from lead.
Oh, yeah.
I
Interesting.
think there's a number of different miracles in the Bible that have been explained by science. I think that it'd be very possible he could have been in a coma or something, and they just didn't know what that was at the time and assumed.
Yeah, that's
Or
what I
like he
think
had
too.
something that just made his heart slow way down and they couldn't hear it. If that was some way that they identified, I don't know how they identified when people were dead back then. I mean, who knows? So,
Well, and obviously he was horribly traumatized. You would think that anybody going through that would be dead. They would just assume that they were dead. You know what I mean? So, but anyway,
There's also that iconic picture of them stabbing him with a spear in
Gruesome.
order to see that if he was dead. I don't know. They were so brutal and had done that to so many people throughout the years that they were pretty good at figuring out if people were still alive or not. And like you said, he had gone through so much, the lashings and just so much that, and then he was left out there. They were all left out there, you know. Anyway,
As an example for other people to see.
yeah, it was terrible. He was supposed to go through that suffering and chose to go through that suffering for us that he didn't have to go, that he, had the opportunity to not go through the suffering, but did so anyway. Hmm. But about the person you were saying that was dead or in a coma for 10 days or pronounced dead, the other person that was kept, people are being kept alive mechanically for long periods of time with hopes that they might, somehow, just have, if they can be brain dead, but their bodies are kept alive, or you know, there might not be really very much um, electrical signals in the brain. So brings up a lot of questions, for sure. Like, what are they, what are they experiencing? There are a lot of those afterlife type, people coming back or dying on the surgery table and then coming back, being brought back to life pretty, quickly, fairly quickly, and then having that experience that those are pretty amazing. They have the out of body experiences and all that stuff too. So I don't know.
Plato saw what they said he was talking about was that's the first time I've ever heard them talk about the soul like that, that there were lives waiting for the souls, and then the soul would enter the body and then away it would go. That's very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it said there were more lives than souls.
Yeah. It's a lot of lives. And of all, all types, lengths, and I mean, you get to select which one, or is it like just like pin the tail on a donkey, or
I think excuse me, I think pretty much everything you're signing up for, because like I've studied this a lot just because of my own experiences and just wanting to kind of validate my own experiences in my mind by seeing somebody else that has experienced the same thing. And it appears that you pretty much get to choose. I mean, you either get to choose a life or you don't. And if you choose that life, you kind of have to take what comes with that life. And of course, there's some things that happen because of our free will here. So it is sort of a blueprint. I don't think that every detail is solidified because our free will can change some things. But I think primarily you kind of stay with, I think you kind of know, because I've read and heard so many stories where people wanted to take on a life and their spirit guides were like, "Are you sure about that? Like, you better really think twice before you take this on." And the souls are like, "Yeah, I can do it. I can do it. I can see myself, yeah, I can do it. Give it to me. I can do it." And then we get down here and we don't have all of our superpowers at hand like we had up there. And we were like, holy smokes.
Oops, I made a mistake.
did he say how many times we get to go back and forth? Plato? I can't believe he wrote about that
No,
so many years ago. Did he make it up? I mean, you know what I'm saying? Or is it true? Or is it Plato? I got one.
Play-Doh.
I got two shuffles. Yay!
I don't know, but there does seem to be, like, and I know it's just YouTube and people can put whatever they want on YouTube, but because many and most of those experiences line up with what I have personally experienced, I do give them some merit. But like so many of them kind of report the same sort of thing. It's not like, I mean, I have seen some where there was some heavy religious overtones, but I think that was just from this lifetime kind of beliefs and stuff interfering or somehow. I mean, I don't know if I don't believe that if you think you're going to hell, you're going to hell. Like, I don't believe that because so many people are convinced of that through religion when my experience is that there's no judgment. So I can see where, our experiences here definitely affect maybe what our afterlife experience would be, but that's one of them that I don't. I mean, hell is kind of like, there's a lot of people living in hell here right now as we speak. People far, far much worse off than anything any of us can even imagine is happening right here, right now. Is that part of their plan that they took on to expose how ugly people can get, how ugly and lost? I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, and in this life experience, if there's no judgment, then really makes you wonder how people can get away with things they do. Or you wish that there was judgment, that they be punished somehow.
Yeah.
Definitely humans want judgment. And it's interesting, doing mediumship, especially around like famous cases and stuff. Most of the time, they won't even come through and tell you the story. Like, they're tired of the story. They're done with it. They've already been
Yeah.
through their review. Everything happened exactly as it was supposed to happen, and they're good with it all because we're all just pixels or something. Like, we think there should be judgment, but there's no everlasting damage to the soul just because of a experience in a lifetime here on earth.
I'm reminded of what it's like when you get into a new video game and you get to choose your character and you get to choose your weapons to some extent, and you get to level up in your experiences to gain uh, different weapons and different skills and more coins, if you will, and how in a video game you can do anything, and then within the parameters of the game, obviously, but it seems to me that the games are getting more and more elaborate in what you can do and more realistic. And so it makes me think that it's very similar to that, and that we've come here, whether it is for a learning experience or simply for entertainment and the vastness of eternity, is kind of the question mark. But it just reminds me so much of that. Every time we read one of these books that talks about making these decisions before you come here and choosing all of these different aspects and the characters that you will interact with and all of the different things that you think that you want to learn, and then just forgetting, it's like this ridiculously elaborate video game. And but I'm fascinated by the person in this chapter that they're referring to, that she said that she did the reading on, and that he had remembered that coming here he was going to have all these experiences, and then he was all disinterested in it. And I feel like that's an odd, I mean, I think in some ways it seems like, yeah, you might be bored because you already know how things are going to come out. But at the same time, if you think that why not just do something completely different? That you think, if you think this is going to happen, then do something completely different so that it is, I don't know. It's just, a fascinating idea. It's like watching a movie again and seeing something completely different in the movie that you didn't recognize before, or playing a game and having a completely different outcome than you were expecting because you changed the rules of the game. You know, if we all play Monopoly by the rules, we know how it's going to end. But if we make up our own rules as we go, we can change the total dynamic of it. So it's curious to me that that man just was living this kind of blah existence because he thought that he knew how it was supposed to be. But I think we do that to ourselves in general. When we think our life is what it is and we have no control, we just are like, bleh, okay, I'm stuck. I'm not even going to try anymore. You know, I don't know. But all of these ideas are very fascinating. And that, but I think that I agree with you on the no judgment side of it, Catherine. Is that I used to feel like, you know, when I was growing up in the Christianity, uh, you know, dogma and whatnot, that we were told that sit down, Izzy, you're gonna fall off of there. Um, just okay, I gotta address what she's telling me about. Sorry, guys.
I'm just kind of left dumbfounded with all of these ideas.
Very interesting.
Well, Samantha, you brought up a point about why wouldn't you just do something different? I think I must have had some premonition um, of what I had signed up for because, and I'll just throw out one little example. When I married my second husband, um, my son's father, he, like, I knew standing at the altar saying my vows, I knew the marriage was not going to last. I
But
knew
here,
it. But I didn't back up and run away from the altar. You know, I went ahead and went through it because somehow I knew that something, well, I knew my son was going to come through somehow. Like, so maybe we do get little inklings of what's to happen or little memories of what we signed up for. Because I mean, there's been hundreds of other things, but that's the main one I can think of right now. I knew this marriage will not last, but it has to happen.
huh.
Yeah, that's a fascinating thing that you just brought up there, Catherine. I had a similar experience with one of my relationships earlier, you know, my young adult relationships. And I remember telling him, you know, he was very much interested in being with me and everything else. And I remember telling him specifically, we were riding in a car and I told him, I was like, this is going to end badly for me. And, you know, you're going to hurt me pretty good. And I still went forward with it, you know, even though I very specifically knew that it was going to end ugly.
And you said that to him?
I totally did. And I don't remember what the circumstances were around how that conversation arose within it. It may have been that I was talking about my intuition and we were having a conversation about that. And he asked me what I thought about the relationship that we were in. And that was what came to mind. And so I shared it with him. And at least I'm thinking that's how the conversation came about. But that was stuck in my mind for years years afterwards, that had been my experience. I knew up front and I still went headlong into the relationship, and it all went to crap, you know. But it's funny because without that experience and without that whole relationship, I can see how my whole life transpired after that. And it all, you know, it's like this whole aspect of, is there free will or isn't there free will, you know, because there are many times in my life where I've come and thought that I've been confronted with a choice of a plan of action. And in my mind, I'm like, this is the direction I want to go. But for the life of me, I could not make the decision to go that way and always went this other way. And it's just an odd feeling sometimes to feel like you have a choice, but yet also feel like you could not make that choice even if you wanted to. It's a weird, I don't know. It's odd. It's an odd feeling. And I've experienced it multiple times in my life.
Absolutely is. And in my soul, in my heart, whatever you want to call it, I felt like and wanted things to go this way and be quote unquote normal, whatever that is. And all my efforts seem to get thwarted somehow, and the exact opposite happens. Like the archetypes take over. I've really been confronted with the fool's archetype of the fool and the archetype of the saboteur. And I'm like, no, you're not in control. I am. It just didn't never seem to work out right.
Well, and what's interesting that I've noticed in my life also is that when I was younger, I had very clear, intuitive feelings of specific things. It wasn't like I could see the future, but yet, like I said, that particular instance, I flat out said, this is what's going to happen. Now, I didn't know the details of it, but I knew the basic core message of that, what that relationship was going to be in one aspect of it, that he was really going to hurt me and it was going to be an ugly relationship. But what I have noticed over the years as I have gotten older and had those intuitive things that have come up in my younger years, that I feel like I have kind of turned off an aspect of that because I don't want to know. Yeah, I don't know. It's a funny thing. So sometimes I think to myself that I want to take the time and I want to get that back, but yet at the same time, I know I have kind of turned that off a lot in a lot of aspects of my life. Now, some aspects I just trust in, just little things. I mean, like if I want to wake up at a certain time, I know that I can just intuitively wake up around about that time. Or when I'm driving down the road, I know that I can intuitively avoid uh, bad situations on the road, so it's well, for instance, if I'm driving from here to go see Angel down in South Carolina, I pretty much know that as long as I let my foot ride on the accelerator and the brake without putting on the cruise control or anything like that, that I will completely avoid speeding at points where I would be pulled over if I was speeding. I just know these things, and it's not that I know, okay, there's a cop up here 3 miles ahead. It's just that I just know when to slow down intuitively and when I can drive 80 otherwise. So it's little things like that that I have no problem allowing my intuitiveness to come through. But the other side of it, I feel like I've really just kind of shut it off over the years. And maybe it's because of kind of like that, the guy that she was talking about, that he already knew it was going to happen to some extent, so he wouldn't do anything. And so maybe that's a part of it, is that I just don't want to know because I don't want to know ahead of time. I don't know, just trying to play it by ear. I guess it's less, if I don't
Yeah, I
have any
can't
choices, I
imagine.
don't want to know. I want it to be discovered along the way, I guess.
It's hard for me to go along with the idea that it's all been decided beforehand, but then I don't have influence or my free will involved. And just taking things day by day and as it is. And I have the same thing with waking up. I haven't had an alarm clock since I was young. Of course, I've not been in a regular 9 to 5 type job, but even for Saturday mornings, I don't set an alarm. I wake up in time to get up and be here. And in some ways, I use my intuition and live by it. And not in everything.
I feel like in some ways the like the Christianity beliefs kind of are telling us that we don't need to worry about anything, you know, that just trust in God, right? And I feel sometimes like that is just trust in this already predetermined plan that's going to happen and you'll be okay. I don't know. I mean, that's kind of like, it's like the religion says basically, or you know, what I gathered from it from all those years of being in Christian school was just trust in the Lord and he will provide, right? And, you know, don't worry about anything because he'll take care of you. And it's kind of this weird thing because for a lot of years I just wanted to go against that. I'm like, no, I'm in control. It's my life. I get to make my decisions. I don't need whatever. And but yet when we let go, if you will, and just kind of go with the flow, things most of the time turn out pretty smoothly. And it's when we're in argumentative mode or we're going against the
Trying to force
when we're
something.
fighting the current, if you will. And you know, but what's interesting to me is that, you know, when we read the book that the Change Your Thoughts, Change Your Life, Living the Wisdom of the Tao by Wayne Dyer, and we went through the Tao Te Ching, there were so many messages in there that were like, go with the flow, be like water, and see how powerful the water is, but yet it's still just, you know, it makes its way. And so we look out into nature and we see how powerful nature is, and nature isn't necessarily strong-willed for a purpose other than survival. And so I'm fascinated by the whole idea of free will versus predestination versus, okay, we come here with a purpose and we're supposed to do all these decisions, and you know, are we just supposed to accept this life that we're in and see how it goes and go with the flow, or are we supposed to be railing against these things, you know, for this human experience? Because the human experience seems to be very much argumentative and wanting
And
to not, yeah,
trying
contradictory,
to defy
yeah,
gravity
trying
and
figuring it all out. I mean, all those
right.
things, you know, we don't see nature out here trying to figure out why it exists. It just exists, you know. So and yet as humans we want to figure it all out and we want to control it and we want to go against the grain, if you will. And every time we kind of get relaxed and go with the flow, then we feel like we're not being productive or we're not doing what we're supposed to do. And then there's all the shoulda, woulda, couldas, and it's
I'm
so
exhausted with it all.
right. So then it comes back to, well, maybe we just relax and go with the flow and not worry about it. But we're not capable of that. We have to be argumentative and difficult and try and figure it out and explain it away and blah, 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 you know. So
I find that very interesting, what you guys are saying. And it makes me think of all the different things that are directing us or guiding us or making us make those different decisions that possibly we might go against what our intuition is or what we want to do, and whether that's fear of something that exists or not, or actual danger that we're looking out for, or maybe maybe it's just something that is we've viewed or learned, and it's in our brain, it's on our mind, all because we've been thinking about it a lot or viewing a lot of videos about it or something, and so that's kind of consuming our thoughts for a while, and so we takes us on that sort of a path. Or like one suggestion I heard the other day in one of the shorts was that um, basically about DNA controlling us quite a bit. Um, what the statement was, everything that the person was saying, everything they do, they'd come to the conclusion everything they do is somehow they're doing it for sex, which is kind of the same for like the DNA and reproduction, that the DNA is DNA, our DNA wants us to reproduce. And we're just a vessel for the DNA to reproduce. Um, we just happen to have the ability to do all these other things. Um, and um, and then of course there's the free will destiny um, consideration. Um, and but when you might have free will, but then that is being um we're either we're either for one reason or another, we're either narrowing our perspective on what our freedom is, or we're overwhelming ourselves with too much freedom and confusing ourselves with too many options. um my point is just that there are so many things that you know besides the fact of all these fast food places pumping out all these smells and sounds and things, and trying to get us to buy their product. Yeah, everyone's vying for our attention, and how almost how can we expect to have any free will these days? um we're getting pulled from our purpose. um it seems, no matter what, yet that this this I don't know if they're calling it a destiny, or the or the purpose, or whatever it is that we're supposed to be doing. Maybe it's a few things, um, like having children, or affecting the lives of many people, or during our life, or after our life, or uh, with it is just so much that is there. So
And there's so many things affecting our DNA, our choices, our ideas. It's just overwhelming. And now to have the whole idea of AI influence, is that real or is it AI? You know, it's being forced upon us or fed to us.
And the question is like that, if we're being affected by these things, is that part of our purpose? I I wonder what that guy Paul, when you're talking about Plato and Paul, that he was able to enter this existence with his memories. If he knew that, they said he was having he couldn't really feel grounded to this existence because he knew so much. Yet, it seems to me that if you knew as much as the spirits, do, then you would know that there isn't anything to kind of worry about in the end, and it's all um, purposeful and so you could go. It would seem to me that you might be able to go through and a little more peacefully with the understanding, but perhaps maybe not if you're seeing everybody else reacting in different ways. Then you might be frustrating. Yet if you did know that you're not supposed to be frustrated because everyone will be okay too. I mean, a lot to it's a lot to think about there.
And I've even heard teachings from Caroline, the author, that about the Christianity thing or whatever, that there is no off-planet being the God, and that I don't know about the right and the wrong and the left and the right. I don't know. I shouldn't have.
It's a and for the source creator to have to um um like fill all these um lives, right? I mean, and we're all different and probably don't all look alike, and but we're the soul, the energy that's inside of us might be very much alike. And maybe they're grooming us for a higher level of society that, if they just plug us in as we are, we wouldn't fit. I don't know. So we get to come back and forth until we finally get it. And I selected this life and to groom my soul. I'm sure I was sitting there like, yeah, that's gonna get really juicy, you know what I mean? Like, not realizing you gotta go through it, you know what I mean? We're just life forms.
I love that, Catherine. Galactic Overseer Department.
Well, it feels like it sometimes, just like that movie. I forget what the name of it was, but where the guys were always in the background making sure that the guy and the girl didn't meet up, but they kept forcing it and they
Oh,
met
I'm
up
not sure I
anyway.
saw that one.
Yeah,
Is that
forget the name of it.
Trying to remember what movie that was. I think I know what movie you're talking about where they're
Had Matt Damon in it. I think is the name of that guy.
right. Can't remember it.
I'll
Yeah,
think
Jason,
of it,
when you were
Lori, and put it in the chat.
Yeah, Jason, when you were talking about the DNA in control, it reminds me of the article I read not too long ago. I think I shared it with you guys where it was talking about how the microbes in our gut, all the bacterias in our
Yeah.
gut are causing us to want to eat this or not eat that or whatever in our environment. Or that whole little concept of maybe the bacterias are really what the main life form is on this, and we're just the vessel for that. So,
We're just here so the bacteria can survive because it's all
Yeah,
about the
yeah, 'cause I
survival
mean,
of the fittest.
Izzy's watching a movie on TV. She finds this movie is so hysterical to her. She's so funny, but I don't know. Well, guys, we're at the top of the hour, and I've got another thing I'm supposed to be on if I can, and I got her and hoping that Papa Chris is awake so I can pass her off for a little while. But yeah, we need to wrap up. So, final thoughts before we close out for today.
Just
Have a
that
great week,
we all
everybody.
have a great week. Sorry.
Yep, that's it. Have a good week.
I think it's important to, well, to the extent that 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 our intuitions or our expectations or our fears are influencing our decisions. I think it's really kind of important for us to have a method that we can use to make those decisions. Perhaps
A blue,
what?
go ahead. I was going to say a blueprint or a manual.
Well, it's kind of like, you can go down and make the pros and the cons, or you can list the things out and then select things and cross things out, I guess, and that sort of a thing. We tend not to do that, even though we have the ability. A lot of times we end up just going with our emotions, um, with a lot of stuff, not being so practical. But I wonder to what extent that is what we're supposed to do. We're being, if we're thrown into this life where we're going to be in these vessels that are ruled by our emotions so much, to such an extent, ruled by our DNA to such an extent, or even the bacterium in our guts to so much that and all of that, creating those emotions, how much of that is part of the plan and how much of it is resisting that. And I kind of feel like it's in a lot of ways, maybe they're like larger purposes and minor purposes. And maybe like the minor purposes, it's like, okay, well, you missed that opportunity and you can't affect the world the way you were supposed to for this minor purpose, but someone else will come along to be able to do that. So they kind of can shift the purposes around. It's like, okay, you're no longer in the area to be able to do this. We're going to have someone else do this, but you're still on track to hit these major purposes, kind of a thing. And where it just seems like maybe there's even minor purposes, major purposes to affect the world, and then there's your personal, like this is what you are supposed to go through as well. But it could go multiple ways even with that as well, depending on what you decide to do. I mean, it has to be something more complex like that, then rather than you just have, you have one purpose in your life, and that's
This
it.
all sounds pretty monumental, and I keep drinking of the waters of forgetfulness.
Yes. We down.
Sometimes that's all I want to drink is the waters of forgetfulness. Let me just turn it off for a
gotta
while. But then I don't want to
gotta
attract the if we're talking about law of attraction, I don't want to attract Alzheimer's. So Let's not drink too much of those waters.
You get a hangover. Still got a hangover from drinking the water. That's funny.
Love you
Uh,
all. Have a great week.
all right,
Love you
guys.
guys.
Love you all. Have
Be
an
safe.
awesome, amazing week. Everybody
you.
who's
See you
out there
next week.
watching, if you've enjoyed this, give us a like on our channel and subscribe so you can get updated each time we upload a new video. So with that, guys, have a great week. See you
Bye.
next time. Bye.
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 They're still there. Oh, there it goes. Wait a minute.